Hey guys, Savage Joy here with Real Progressives. Tonight I am joined by one of my favoriteest guests ever, Mr. Tim Canova. He's joining me for the third time. Tonight's an exclusive. So this is his first interview since all the breaking news in Broward County. So I'm so honored and glad to have you, Tim. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Joy. It's great to be with you, as always.
Oh, thank you. This is such a huge topic that you guys know I talk about like pretty much 24/7. It's so important to discuss what's going on with Tim's election simply because most people aren't. So what I'm going to ask you guys, and I've been posting about it for 2 days, I'm going to request that all of you guys, anyone who has Twitter, go to Twitter and tweet this show at CNN and MSNBC and all the MSM, corporations on Twitter. Just keep repeatedly tweeting this and all of Tim's interviews. It's going to be harder for them to ignore us if we keep tagging them in everything. So we gotta do our job to make this known and to get this coverage. So anyway, I digress. Thank you so much, Tim. I know the past few days have just been chaos, especially December 1st, you came out with a document stating that you were going to court to file an official complaint against the shenanigans that went on in your election. Do you want to talk a little bit about that and what what inspired you to do that?
Sure. It really came obviously out of our experience in the last election. It's hard to predict any kind of election outcome when you don't have a lot of polling. There was no exit polls. There were no published polls prior to the election. There was the Floridian Press had a report about a Republican poll, and I tried hard to get my hands on it, but no one has. But the report said that poll had Wasserman Schultz and me and us tied at about 34%, and the Republican way back in I think around 13, they said. And that didn't surprise us that we were, it was a two-person race, it seemed to us.
Sure.
The gerrymandered district, less than, I think, about 23% of the registered voters are Republican. A lot of independents, almost as many independents as Democrats, or it's beginning to catch up. So we thought we were in the hunt the whole time. And our experience on the ground was very positive in the last 2 weeks during early voting and election day. I wouldn't hazard to guess. I thought we had a fighting chance to pull it out, but I really didn't know. It was not a fair election going into it in that, Wasserman Schultz just, again, dodged debates. Their strategy, they talk about voter suppression, but this is what they do. They want a low turnout quite often. She wasn't looking to publicize or give any airtime to any of her challengers. But anyway, we thought it was competitive. And then the polls closed, and within an hour, the race is called, and I'm at 5%. So right from the beginning, I thought, this is bullshit. It just didn't make much sense to me. But of course, there are a lot of voters who are going to vote a straight party line, either blue or red. So we knew we were up against that. But by the same token, ever since that Floridian Press report came out showing us neck and neck, we had a lot of folks coming our way. And not just Democrats, a lot of Republicans too. And I'll say to your viewers out there, don't just hashtag MSNBC and CNN, hashtag Fox as well. Fox has been paying attention to what's happening in Broward County. Probably more, unfortunately, than CNN or MSNBC. So when the dust settled from the election and the election experts started to bear down and get into the numbers of what happened, they started to uncover an awful lot of irregularities and anomalies. And I had been promising to seek a recount whatever the outcome. I think the powers that be, whoever may have manipulated this election, would have wanted me down real low to deter us from seeking a challenge to the election results.
Absolutely.
And, you know, obviously, most times somebody seeks a challenge, it's neck and neck. Andrew Gillum didn't seek a challenge against Ron DeSantis for the governor's race. Bill Nelson didn't seek a challenge against Bill Nelson for the Senate race. And those were close results. I've actually gotten some Democrats angry at me because I'm not seeking to contest the election for Andrew Gillum and Bill Nelson. I kid you not. It's like, really? I'm taking care of our race here in Florida's 23rd. So I'll tell you what's in the, we filed an amended complaint today, which is, you know, it's basically we put in more information as it's been coming in. The complaint shows how there was a complete breakdown in the chain of custody of the paper ballots and the electronic voting machines. Now, that's important for a number of reasons. It certainly casts doubt on the election results. It also would cast doubt on any recount of the paper ballots or using the electronic voting machines again in a recount, which is why in our complaint, we're asking the court to invalidate the election, to order a new election, and to order that that new election proceed without the electronic voting machines, with paper ballots, hand-marked paper ballots counted by hand in public. That's the prayer for relief. Now, the breakdown in the chain of custody for the paper ballots, we had on election day and evening, probably a couple of hundred volunteers throughout the district at various precincts and voting sites. And maybe it was inevitable. One of them saw something and said something. She took out her cell phone camera and took a video, and the video went viral. A couple of million people plus ended up watching it. And it showed a line of cars coming up, one person in each car, taking out the big blue satchels filled with paper ballots. Basically, they were being loaded onto a enterprise truck rental, rented truck. So every lawyer I know who has seen it, and I've spoken to really just a few, but they're very experienced election lawyers, said this is outrageous. There's no chain of custody whatsoever going on here. Nobody, you know, and if there's no chain of custody, you don't know what they're doing with those ballots. Of course, just to remind you that in 2016, when I ran against Wasserman Schultz, we also had concerns that the final outcome was rigged, and I asked to inspect the paper ballots, and Brenda Snipes, the supervisor of elections, destroyed all of them in violation of state and federal laws, criminal laws, felonies. Nothing happened to her. That's another conversation which we can have. The breakdown in the chain of custody of the electronic voting machines was also revealed that all of these electronic voting machines, from the scanners to the tabulators, had wireless cellular modems on them. So the moment you take your paper ballot and put it through that scanning machine, you don't know if that vote is being counted properly, or if just through those cellular modems, somebody has hacked in and put a few lines of code into the software, and you know somebody thinks they're voting for Canova. No, it's going for Wasserman Schultz. Thirdly, 97,000 plus ballots, votes that Wasserman Schultz received. There's no indication where, when, and how those votes were cast. We don't know if they were cast through vote by mail, early voting, election day, or provisional. That's highly suspicious. The experts who we've spoken to said it's consistent with exchanging votes, which would be, you know, manipulating the software so that a vote for one or more candidates are exchanged and end up with another candidate. What else am I missing? What came into the amended complaint today was the fact that I seem to have been capped at 5% throughout the district in every demographic. And we've got highly credentialed statistical experts, one of whom said, the chances of that happening are like winning the lottery every day of the year. So, you know, the legal standard in Florida to contest an election is misconduct sufficient to either change the outcome of an election or cast doubt upon the outcome of the election. And that's our argument, that we see these serious, repeated misconduct, serious misconduct, that was sufficient to cast doubt upon the outcome of the election. So that's
absolutely.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to agree, and just to clarify, because there's a lot of people just joining. A lot of people are saying a recount. This is not a recount. If they do a recount, it's going to be like, 5% again or something. This is for a revote. They need to scrap that shit and start over. Hand counted paper ballots, triple checked with video recording. Like, it needs to start over and be fair. Yeah. So that's the difference. As far as, you saw stuff on Gillum and Abrams 24/7. Absolutely. And especially Gillum is in your state too. And they just seem to keep leaving you out. And when there's more tangible proof coming forward every single day, how frustrating is that for you?
Joy, I'm used to it. We've suffered for the past year, maybe year and a half, from a news blackout from the mainstream media. So it doesn't surprise me. And, I would have been surprised if they gave us much attention. I was hoping that, look, I got fed up with the Democratic Party for a number of reasons. When we established that Brenda Snipes had destroyed all the paper ballots, and not a single Democratic Party official from Tallahassee to Broward County or even Washington, D.C. would step up and simply call for an investigation, I really had it with the party, and I decided to run as an independent. And, a lot of people criticized me for that. A lot of people praised me for it. My logic was not just my distaste for what the Democratic Party had become and how they were treating my campaign and other insurgent campaigns, challengers to incumbents. But I also thought it made sense strategically in that the Republicans could do a lot of the heavy lifting. They could spend some money going after Wasserman Schultz with her scandals. There was the Awan IT scandal on Capitol Hill. And that would help me, of course, I thought, to the degree the Republicans were really going after Wasserman Schultz. I thought once what we discovered in the lawsuit, the ballot destruction, once we established it in a court of law and a judge ruled our way, that would really change things. It would be a game changer. The floodgates would open, the media blackout would have to end, and that law enforcement agencies would finally get involved and investigate and hopefully prosecute. None of that came to pass. I should say some of it did, in that the Florida Circuit Court in May of this year granted a summary judgment against Brenda Snipes, ruled that Snipes had violated numerous state and federal statutes, destroyed evidence in an ongoing litigation, lied about it for months, and ultimately had to admit it in deposition, videotaped sworn deposition. So when the judge ruled for us, I was hoping that would be the game changer, but nothing changed. Law enforcement agencies didn't get involved. The governor, Rick Scott, did not fire the supervisor, and the Republicans remained pretty quiet about Wasserman Schultz's scandals. In fact, on Capitol Hill, they helped, and the Justice Department helped sweep those scandals under the rug. So I wasn't surprised when the election ended on November 6th that our race wasn't going to get any attention. The mainstream media just repeats the official results as if they've been handed down by God to Moses on Mount Sinai or something, and they don't really question those results. What was different here was the double train wreck that ended up in Broward County, the governor's race and the Senate race, right in the lap of Brenda Snipes, who seemed to just keep finding more and more ballots after the polls had closed for days. And, suddenly some of the media discovered that Snipes had destroyed all of the ballots cast in 2016. And unfortunately, the only major media outlet that had me on to talk about it was Fox News, which kind of shows that the media outlets, like the political parties, only want to focus on election fraud when it's embarrassing to the other party, not when it might embarrass their allies. So Snipes came in the crosshairs of a lot of folks. A lot of her corruption and incompetence both, I think, started coming to light. And I wasn't surprised that she announced she was going to resign. I was glad that Governor Scott announced that she was fired. And I think they have to treat Broward County Supervisor of Elections office as if it's a crime scene. And you want to remove the criminals from the crime scene, send in law enforcement to make sure evidence is not destroyed, and investigate from within. And I certainly hope that's what's going on now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, watching all that go down and watching that video of her, unabashed, just, yes, I destroyed them. And just seeing how cavalier, like, I did, but, And then not only did she not lose her job, she didn't get prosecuted. Right now, okay, yeah, people were pissed because she was still going to get like $163,000 a year's pension and stuff like that. Yes, absolutely. Screw that. But, and I'm glad she got fired, but she needs to be in prison. This is federal offenses. It's disgusting.
Federal and state, it is disgusting. There needs to be criminal prosecutions. I've been saying it for a long time. There has been an enormous degree of arrogance by the criminals here. They break the law with impunity, and that really is a sign not of a democracy and the rule of law, but of a banana republic. To tell you how arrogant and how open the corruption is. Chris Hedges said that the corruption's so bad now that they don't even try to hide it. And it really is true. Snipes admitted, we destroyed the ballots, but it's a mistake. So what? And that seemed to satisfy law enforcement agencies. And then about 2 weeks before the election, not even quite 2 weeks, Brenda Snipes was out there publicly campaigning with Debbie Wasserman Schultz.
Yeah.
So that's the arrogance, the kind of arrogance that may have led some folks to feel that if we're going to manipulate the election results, let's not even come out with a believable result. Let's hit Canova, put him down around, cap him at 5%. We can always count on the corporate media to repeat it like it's the gospel truth and to give a narrative as to why it makes sense. Canova didn't raise as much money as last time. People were afraid of the Congress going red, so they had to vote blue. They have their narratives, and they're not going to look at any kind of countervailing evidence.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, something else that a lot of people don't consider is that when, well, actually, yeah, this question kind of touches on what I was going to say. Have any local attorneys, I know that you're working with a few. I'm having someone you've been talking with on Monday night, Jenny Cohn.
Oh, Jenny Cohn is, I've met her only through Twitter.
Okay.
We've interacted a number of times, and I'm very impressed with her work. What Jennifer's been doing as far as her analysis of the electronic voting machines and a lot of the kind of systematic problems in the system. It's very impressive. And I know she's been rooting us on here. And a number of folks have been rooting us on because, there's so many elections that turn out and the results are strange. Like, could it be? Is that real? Did Dennis Kucinich really lose 2-1 in Ohio? Did Alan Grayson really lose by that much? And for that matter, you can go back to John Kerry in 2004. Did Kerry really lose Ohio and New Mexico and all these states where he was ahead in the polls and the exit polls? Did Bernie really lose a dozen states where he won the exit polls? And there's so much pressure on these losing candidates to not say a word, to not contest the elections, to not create waves. They're told by the lobbyists, they're told by the political consultants that if you make a stink about it, you will not have any future viability. That's really the phrase, future viability. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm not a professional politician. I've never pretended to be one. I'm a law professor. I've got a job to go back to teach at a university. I don't need the job on Capitol Hill. I wanted to serve. I've seen how ill-served the people of my congressional district and in South Florida are. That if you're wealthy and you live in a really good gated community, nice neighborhood, everything's fine. For everyone else, it's like they don't have representation. So I did want to serve, but I've always thought that this campaign and the first one were about things much bigger than me and my fate. I've got a relatively comfortable and interesting job teaching at a university to go back to. So when somebody says, well, if you rock the boat, if you make waves, if you speak out about the rigged system, you won't be viable in the future, my attitude is, I don't give a damn. You know,
yep.
I think it's so much more important to expose what's wrong here. We rank like just about dead last among democracies. I don't even want to call this a democracy anymore. We're one of the only major countries that pretends to be a democracy that has these electronic voting machines. And they're not just electronic voting machines. They're using software that's proprietary, software that's the private property and trade secrets of private corporations. We're not allowed to inspect that software. This is a black box. You vote and you put your trust. So you're putting your trust into a system that's not trustworthy. It's not verifiable. Essentially, there's a whole bunch of different actors that have the means, the motive, and the opportunity to rig elections, but we're supposed to trust they won't. Why? Because they've taken an oath, because they're presumably ethical people. And, you know, I don't want to point the finger at Brenda Snipes or Debbie Wasserman Schultz, at either of them here.
I will.
Well, you know, there's a lot of things to point the finger at them about, whether it's the ballot destruction or a lot of different things that Wasserman Schultz has been involved in. But the fact is, when you've got cellular modems connected by Wi-Fi, even if it's encrypted, you've got so much opportunity for highly sophisticated actors. Doesn't have to be Russians. You know, there's plenty here in this country, in the private sector or in our intelligence community, that can easily go in there, put some software code in there, and change the results however they want them changed. That's not a transparent, verifiable election system. We should have zero tolerance for it. I know there are a lot of election integrity folks who they want to inspect the digital scanned images. They think we can monitor and audit the results of these electronic voting machines. I'm very skeptical of that at this point. Perhaps you can have open source software and you can have digital scanned images as the backup. But I think the primary way to count votes should be 100% hand-marked paper ballots that are counted by hand in public, open to viewing, videotaping, photographs. We need a very open culture here if we're going to restore people's faith in the voting system. 107 million Americans who theoretically could have voted in 2016 never bothered to vote. After what I've been through for 2 cycles now, I must say, it makes me wonder why anyone would run for office when you have electronic voting machines, and maybe even why you'd even vote when you have electronic voting machines.
Absolutely. It's getting harder and harder to convince people, and it's getting harder and harder to convince yourself to go vote. People are definitely discouraged, rightfully so. One thing I wanted to ask you is, you're a lawyer, not necessarily an election kind as a specialty, but as far as this, the suit you just filed at the courthouse, would they be able to bring in the things that happened from 2016 and the fact that she was fired from the DNC for cheating? Like, are you going to be able to bring in those things as well, or are those truly separate entities?
Yeah, that the court, I think, would say is irrelevant.
Right.
And what we did bring into the complaint, though, was our experience dealing with the Broward election officials and the destruction of the ballots, and what we learned in our litigation to try to inspect those ballots. There are a lot of folks here, Republicans and Democrats, I should say, Republicans, independents, and insurgent Democrats, who have been on the losing end of elections in Broward, who don't trust the results at all. The primary in August of this year, I wasn't in the primary because I ran as an independent, but I'll tell you, 2 of the 3 Republican candidates running for our congressional seat did not believe the outcome of the election. I think they had, let me say, they had very serious questions about the outcome of the election. They both spent a lot of money, time, resources, had very aggressive ground games, and they lost to a perennial candidate who always gets the nomination and always loses, and that candidate didn't even spend much money. So they would like to contest now. I spoke to them shortly after their primaries and tried to give them the benefit of my insight, having battled this machine for so long, and neither one of them were willing to pull the trigger and actually contest the election. And that ship has sailed, you can say. It's too late now for them to contest the election, their primary defeats. So I'm not an election lawyer. We have hired local counsel in Tallahassee because this congressional district spans 2 counties, Miami-Dade and Broward County. Most of it's in Broward, but some of it's in Miami-Dade. Under the statute, that means the venue for us bringing a lawsuit is Leon County, where Tallahassee is, the state capital. So it's expensive to hire lawyers to represent us at this point. And we are urging folks to step up and to help us, to go online to timcanova.com and to help contribute to our campaign. We've got 2 different funds. One is for a recount, revote fund to contest the election. And the other is just to retire some of our debt from the previous campaign. I put really my entire life savings into the 2 campaigns and now the election contest. I'm not singing the blues. I know a lot of people have it a lot worse than I do in this country right now. I'm very fortunate to have a job to go back to, and I'll be looking forward to that paycheck in January.
Absolutely. Yes. Anyone who can even donate $3, please donate to Tim. I'm not even going to ask how much the lawyer fees are and everything, because I can only fathom. And also please share that to all your followers that, he needs donations to do this. This isn't so much just about this one election. This is our democracy. If we win this case, we can use it in the future and say, look, in Tim Canova's case, they gave him a revote because we can actually use that. So this is so imperative that we win this for democracy, for Tim, for every reason. So also, one thing I wanted to talk to you about is, you know how I feel about you going independent. I literally squealed. I was so freaking happy when you decided to. And a lot of people don't understand. But the fact of the matter is, if you go against Debbie in the primaries and you're both Democrats, she would have kicked you out months ago because she would have cheated. Whereas you go independent, you have until November to rally people to do things, and you had a much better chance. And I think that scared the living shit out of her.
I kind of agree with you on, much of what you just said there. My view was, after the court ordered summary judgment for us on May 11th, that if the governor had fired the supervisor right away and put in a new supervisor, then maybe it would have made some sense for me to run as a Democrat and stay in.
Yes.
If I had some sense that that the cards weren't so stacked against me in the primary. I thought when the governor didn't do that, and it was clear he wasn't going to do that, I thought that by running as an independent in the general election in a three-way race, that the Republicans would be more engaged in watching what the supervisor was doing and preventing any kind of rigging. And again, you know, Brenda Snipes has done an awful lot of illegal, unethical, wrong things. But we can't know for sure who would have manipulated that software. You know, I can't say it was somebody in the supervisor's office. They created the conditions, the election officials did, that would have enabled an outsider or even an insider to manipulate the software and get away with it. So running as an independent was a risk. It would have been a risk to run as a Democrat in the primary. In my heart of hearts, I no longer felt the same kind of love and allegiance for the Democratic Party that I did for many years growing up. The party of Roosevelt and Kennedy. It's now the party of Wasserman Schultz, and it has been for a while, where money talks and people fall into line and follow the leadership, and they don't really question authority and break with authority. You know, what you said earlier, that this isn't just my fight. I don't believe it is just my fight. I've been saying for a long time now that if we don't fix the system in Florida, for those who are hoping that, let's say, Bernie Sanders runs in 2020, good luck winning the state of Florida if you don't clean up Broward County. Broward County is the biggest Democratic bastion of this state. And if elections are rigged against progressives in primaries, you know, you're going to end up with another Hillary Clinton, another establishment Democrat winning the state of Florida in a primary. This is something that needed to be addressed now. It still does. It needs to be addressed now. And I'm hoping the court, I still have some faith in the court system. We got a good judge on the Florida Circuit Court that ruled for us on the ballot destruction case. We're hoping that the Florida Circuit Court will be a fair judge of what's going on and be willing to apply the legal standard that there was serious misconduct that calls into, raises doubt about the outcome. Absolutely.
To your knowledge, has there ever been a revote in Florida?
There have been numerous elections invalidated around the country, elections and referendums. I don't know of a congressional race that's been invalidated in Florida, but there's been a lot of other things that have, where the courts have intervened over the years. I think what we have now is a very unique situation, though. When you've got the supervisor of elections of Broward that has become so visibly embarrassed, discredited nationally and throughout the state of Florida, I think it starts changing the way the judges and others may look at my complaint, our challenge, our contest. Had Snipes gotten a free ride in this general election, had it, let's say, Rick Scott and Ron DeSantis won landslides and it never ended up being a question, maybe it wouldn't have been, you know, maybe their strategy, whoever they are, of capping me at 5% might have had the desired effect. It might have scared me off from seeking to invalidate the election. But it became so clear to everybody, not just to us, how flawed the elections in Broward County are, that it emboldened us to move forward. And one of the things that deterred us for a while was the money. You know, it is very tough to go through two elections the way we did. The second election, suffering a news blackout, and we raised almost $500,000, I believe, in this last election. But we spent most of it. We kept spending it the whole time. We didn't stuff it away in the bank. We were building a ground game the entire time. So we finished with not much money left in the campaign, actually with debts for the campaign. And as I said, my limited personal savings is now going into the recount. And it might not be enough. We need to raise money for not just the lawyers, but expert witnesses. And I hope folks, I get a lot of people from around the country and around the state of Florida and my district all cheering us on and saying, you know, thank God somebody's finally standing up and contesting an election. And not just contesting it, but calling into question the electronic machinery, the actual systems by which we count the votes. And
absolutely,
I hope those who are excited about what we're doing, that they are willing to open up their pockets a little bit and help us out now.
Absolutely. It's totally, I can't think of something more important for our democracy. The fact that you're now dealing with this a second time. I can't even fathom when this shit happens and you got 5%, you know, I said, I don't even blame you if you don't fight this one, because I would just be so defeated and so exhausted. But you're like, no, I'm going to fight this. So that's why people in the comments are calling you a hero. That's why. I know you're too modest to, you know, but I'm saying like you are so much stronger than you give yourself credit for. Like, you are seriously championing democracy right now.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that. I'll say when this race ended, like the first one, you know, we worked so hard down that home stretch where, you know, I was getting so little sleep a night. We're out there all over the district every day for long days and evenings that I knew once we hit the finish line, I was going to have to sleep for a week. Well, I slept for a day. And I must say that in my heart of hearts, I didn't feel defeated. I felt cheated. Had they given me 30%, right, some believable figure,
yes,
then perhaps I would have felt defeated. But I found the election result so ludicrous, and I said so on election night, that in my heart of hearts, I didn't feel defeated. I was very proud of what we did in this campaign, in some ways more proud of this campaign than the first one. We had such few resources, and the people who stepped up to help in the final month or two, especially, I was so impressed and so grateful to see this kind of grassroots campaign spring up out of nowhere. I remember, you know, saying I was calling all angels. Well, the angels appeared. You know, the Movement for a People's Party, the Green Party. Lots of progressive Democrats, lots of Republicans. People came out of the woodwork. They wanted change. They were hungering for change. People who maybe don't agree with my entire progressive agenda, but they understood that that's actually secondary, that this was not a race. And I don't think in this country it is anymore, always about right versus left. It's right versus wrong. It's integrity versus corruption. If you don't have integrity in your elections, you don't have democracy. And there's no faith in the outcomes when it's such a rigged system like this.
Absolutely. And when, you know, when there was all that Republican cheating with Stacey Abrams and everything, there was so much outrage on social media. But we pleaded, can you join our fight for paper ballots, things like this? Where'd they all go?
Yeah.
It's not their person. You know what I mean? So they just all kind of disappeared. What can we, just as we the people, what can we do to actually, you know, get paper ballots, you know, and things like that? I'm in Pennsylvania, so I saw what Jill Stein just did, you know, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
I'm very thankful for. What can we do?
Yeah, you know, listen, I'm glad you mentioned Jill Stein. She deserves a big shout out. She also was beaten down in the 2016 election. And a lot of those election results she got were not really believable either. And she was willing to stick her neck out and fight and contest in a number of states. And it takes a lot of guts for somebody like Jill Stein to do that, because you know what's going to happen. They're going to be called sore losers, and every other kind of, insult that her political enemies and the mainstream media will send their way, and my way as well. The settlement she got in Pennsylvania it's a step in the right direction. It might not be perfect, but it's a step in the right direction. And I think this is what we've got to do. We've got to constantly question machines and call for paper ballots. We think about this with healthcare. With healthcare, what are progressives saying? They're not talking about tinkering with the system. They're not content to just say what's wrong with the present system. They understand that things have gotten so bad, we have to demand the world that we want, Medicare for all. Well, we got to do the same when it comes to election integrity. It's not enough to just critique the system and to say, we'll tinker with it if only we can have some better auditing of it. No, we've got to understand what will work, what it is we need to make sure we have transparent and verifiable elections. And that's simple paper ballots. So that's one thing. Smash the machine, rage against the machine. That's got to be a popular slogan, a movement to end these electronic voting machines. We've put too much faith and confidence in technology without really analyzing it and understanding that those who are controlling the technology are private actors who are not accountable to anyone, but they're shareholders perhaps, or they're CEOs. So smashing the machine, raging against the machine, I do think that that's what we all have to be doing right now.
Absolutely. Now is not a time to be complacent. The more people are apologists and everything right now, just like this woman, Amy, thank you so much for contributing your apologist ways. People are, people, who are apologists and complacent and, enable this kind of thing are also going to be whining in 2020 when their candidate gets screwed.
Yeah.
So if you're not willing to fight for this shit now, don't complain later. We have a year and a half to change shit, and that is not that long. So
and what you said about our case is true. I mean, imagine if we can actually win this lawsuit, get a court to invalidate this congressional election, and order paper ballots. That would be an enormous precedent. And what's frustrating is, if you don't go through the courts, how do you change the system? You change it through legislative action, Congress. Unfortunately, these members of Congress have all benefited from the system the way it is. I'm not saying every congressional district and every race for the Senate has been rigged, but I will say that if they can manipulate the software in Broward County, they can do it just about anywhere in this country.
Yeah, absolutely. Amy, next time I have Tim on, I would love to invite you to the comment section, and we can discuss the proof of how your girl rigged it again. Also, try and educate yourself on why she was forced to resign for the DNC. That's a really good story. So, what's that?
Who's Amy? Is Amy a reader, a viewer?
He's I'm assuming a Clintonite.
Oh, okay. I'm getting some flack coming in. Is that it?
One person. High five. Only one person. That's awesome. I usually get way more hate than that, so that's pretty awesome. As far as people are asking what the steps are going to be now. Okay, so when do you anticipate getting a court date, first of all?
We've asked for an early court date. We should find that out pretty soon. We just got assigned a case number and a judge. We're hoping for an expedited hearing. I think things will happen very quickly in the month of December. I think in early January is when Congress actually has to certify their members. So this could play out in a number of interesting ways, Joy. Of course, we could lose the lawsuit. We could lose it quickly. You just never know. But if we get a judge who wants to actually hear the evidence and listen to our expert witnesses, If we could invalidate the election, I doubt we'll have a new election before January. Congress would be in an interesting position of having to delay a certification, I imagine, of Debbie Wasserman Schultz's seat and wait for an election, or certify her pending the election. And that would be an interesting vote for Democratic members of the House, wouldn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. And if enough Democratic members of the House are stripped away and join with Republicans, maybe Wasserman Schultz is not rubber stamped there. If she is rubber stamped, that's the Debbie Wasserman Schultz albatross once again, which I've been warning about for 2 years now. 2 years ago, I warned that if Debbie won the primary, she would be an albatross around Hillary Clinton's neck in the state of Florida. And sure enough, she was. Hillary Clinton, with Debbie Wasserman Schultz by her side, could not defeat Donald Trump in the state of Florida. I warned this time that if Andrew Gillum and Bill Nelson campaigned with Wasserman Schultz, that she would be an albatross around their necks. And, you know, Nelson and Gillum, these were races they could have and probably should have won. They were ahead in the polls going in. They needed to really seal the deal in Broward County, the Democratic stronghold. They both underperformed in Broward County. Debbie Wasserman Schultz is poison in large parts of this country and in the state of Florida and even in Broward County. And yet she hangs in there and maintains her power, not based on popular appeal, but on money. If you look at the FEC reports or OpenSecrets.org, you're going to see that she outraised us by a lot this time. I mean, millions of dollars she raised. And she's raising it from all the big corporate interests, all those political action committees. And she didn't spend much money in this campaign that we could tell, which maybe she realized the fix was in and she didn't need to spend it. But that's a lot of money that she can give to other members of Congress to help maintain her position in the House.
Absolutely. There's some really good comments and questions in here, so definitely after we get off the air, definitely check them out. You have so much support. And if you guys want to check it out too, a bunch of us from Real Progressives and a bunch of Tim's supporters made him a video the other day, and it's really touching and it's awesome. If I do say so myself.
No, I must say it lifted my spirits a lot. You can imagine that this has been a roller coaster. Under even the best of circumstances, it would be, but it's been 35 straight months for me fighting it out against a very tough machine. And for a lot of it, we've been fighting it, I don't want to say alone, because we've had a lot of grassroots support and social media progressive support like that you lend to us, that you give to us. But we've also had an awful lot of headwinds, and you know, the progressive establishment has not been there for us. They've been scared away. So it's been 35 straight months. We're all very tired here, but we don't want to give up the fight at this point. We really have wanted to expose the corruption, and it does feel to us that Broward County is the epicenter of that corruption in the Democratic Party.
Yeah, it really does seem that way, unfortunately. So what are your thoughts? Are you cautiously optimistic? What are your thoughts as far as what's going to happen?
I've got good lawyers. I've got, I think, compelling facts on our side. I'd like to be hopeful that we can win this. There's no guarantee but there's been no guarantee for the last 3 years. You know, somebody said to me recently, the most important fights are the fights you know you're going to lose, but you fight them anyway. Now, I wouldn't say I knew I was going to lose any of these. I didn't want to believe I was going to lose either of these elections or this lawsuit or the lawsuit we won on the ballot destruction. We lost the ballots, we won the lawsuit. I don't have a crystal ball. I can't tell you. Some days I'm more optimistic than others. It's a little bit of a roller coaster emotionally, just because of, it's been going on for so long. It's not a normal life. There's been a lot of sacrifices that I've made personally and financially. There are a lot of sacrifices that my staff and supporters have made, supporters here and around the country. I think the time will come when I'll get a little break, a little vacation. I thought if I won in November, that I would take a week or two. I got my passport renewed. I thought maybe I should get out of the country for a week or two, clear my head. I've got cabin fever here in Broward County. It feels like Gladiator, and it just won't end. But I never got that vacation because of the litigation. I'm not getting the kind of time I need for recuperating. But sooner or later, the litigation will end. We'll turn a corner. Either lightning will strike and Wasserman Schultz will have to face the voters in a revote with paper ballots. And we will throw ourselves into that if that's where this is heading. If it's not heading that way and this is a losing effort, I think it is still going to be worthwhile because it's exposing the flaws in the system. I would urge folks to go to our website, to timcanova.com, and look under the latest news, and you can actually read the 25-page complaint that we filed. The amended complaint is now up there. And it's a fascinating read. You see all the weaknesses in the system, all the vulnerabilities, from the paper ballots to the electronic voting machines, and then what nefarious forces can do in light of those vulnerabilities. The kinds of statistical evidence that is just not credible that comes out of this election. So, I hope, look, I'm a law professor and an educator at heart, and I've really tried to run these campaigns, not putting my finger up to the wind and playing politics. I knew that that's a fool's errand at this point, especially for me. I'm not going to raise more money by kowtowing my message or my positions to some corporate interests. I really feel that we've had what's been a gift to this campaign, to me, in the last 3 years now, has been that it's allowed me to champion the politics of truth at a time when we need the politics of truth. Orwell had said that in a time of universal deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. We want to educate people. We were trying to educate folks on the issues all up and down the line, starting with the problems with campaign finance reform, all the way to the education system, healthcare, you name it. Now, the top issue, and it's been the top issue really since the last election for us, is not just campaign finance. It's the integrity of the vote count, of the ballot counting, of how we conduct our elections. I truly believe that if we had hand-counted paper ballots in this country, races like ours, where we're outspent 10 or 20 to 1, would be winnable. The people are ready for change. The people don't believe in these incumbent politicians at all anymore. And I think in a fair vote, progressives will win.
I totally agree. Absolutely.
But without a fair vote, it's more of the status quo, with just the window dressing, with an occasional progressive who gets in there, who can talk about Medicare for all from dusk to dawn, but it won't be enough to change things. Absolutely.
I was interviewed earlier tonight by Slow News Day, and we were talking about the same exact thing. You're so right. So what's next? What's next on the itinerary?
We're getting our expert witnesses lined up. We're looking forward to preparing for a hearing. We got our gladiator suits on for this legal challenge. That's really what's next. There is no other, to make that happen, we're going to do what we can to raise money, to raise public support, public attention, and to use the moment to educate the public. So that really is what's next. Beyond that, when January comes, I have no idea. I have no idea if lightning's going to strike or if I'm going back into the academy to teach. If I'm going back to teach, that's fine. I've got a lot to teach and to write about. and it'll be a little bit of an easier lifestyle for me than being a candidate. You know, ever since November 6th, since the election is behind us, I'm still working very hard, long days and nights associated with the recount, talking to lawyers and election experts. But at least I don't have to be jumping in my car and driving to all over this district. It's a big district geographically. I know there are bigger districts in rural areas, but still, I put a lot of miles on the car. It could be very exhausting. So I'm just trying to physically recover and get my head space into a little bit of a happier place. I don't have that much time to focus on the national political fights and dramas that are going on. I mean, probably as much as the average person, I'm aware of what's happening nationally. It'll be interesting to see the Democrats take the House. It'll be interesting to see what happens between now and then with all the investigations going on both ways. Who knows if there'll be some big revelations coming in the next few weeks. We'll see.
Yeah, this is definitely an interesting time, that's for sure. I see some people are sending donations your way, so that's so exciting. Thank you guys so much.
Really appreciate it, and spread the word to others. You know, not everyone. This is why it's so important what you're doing, Joy, and what others on social media are doing. The progressive voices on social media. There is still a news blackout on this story. It's not been reported on any of the mainstream press yet. And we need to get the word around the country. This is unique. You know, people are always saying, look, a lot of us were frustrated that Bernie didn't contest those primaries. And it wasn't just one primary. It was one after the other. And I'm not criticizing him. He has his reasons. I happen to think what I said earlier about John Kerry, it's probably the same with Bernie. There's a lot of pressure that comes to bear on professional politicians if they want to be viable in the future. But a lot of us were frustrated. We wanted him to fight it. So I'm doing what people wanted Bernie to do, what people are always saying that losing candidates should do when they think the election is rigged. And I'm doing it when it's so outrageous that they pin me down at 5%. And, you know, it reminds me of the old Soviet Union, where elections were 99% to 1, or when Saddam Hussein had an election and it was like that. I mean, that's what it felt like here, that there was this cognitive dissonance of people who live in the district and saw what was happening, where there was a groundswell for us. And again, I'm not claiming we won. I don't know, but I am certain we were way up, well above the official figure. So we're doing what people are always saying needs to be done. We're sticking our necks out. We're contesting an election. We're offering evidence. And we're sacrificing to do it. And we need public support. We need grassroots support to come out of the woodwork, give those small donations, and spread the word to others, and keep talking about this night and day. You know, there's all kinds of issues that are, you know, passing issues, whether it's the Russiagate and the Mueller investigation, or the passing of George Herbert Walker Bush, or whatever. You know, these are passing issues. We are really putting a line in the sand here and trying to do something that can have a monumental impact on the future of our election system. If we can win this this contest, if we can get a judge who will rule our way, and especially if we can get a court to rule that the revote must go forward with paper ballots, that would be an enormous precedent. And otherwise, I'm not quite sure how we get there. Again, waiting on Congress to act. When you don't have an election system that's fair, that's transparent, that's verifiable, that's free and fair, where ordinary citizens can bring about change through the ballot, and when you can't bring about change through massive civil disobedience, you don't have a lot of options left. It's either to submit like serfs, or to be out in the streets being uncivil. And I would hate that that's where this country would be going at some point in the future, you know, whether it's a year or 10 years down the road. But we don't have a democracy that's responsive to the the needs of the people. I know, and I know personally a lot of loved ones, and I know as a candidate being around this congressional district that most human beings right now in this country are struggling paycheck to paycheck, if they even have a paycheck. They don't have life savings. Many of them are way underinsured. They either don't have health insurance or they can't afford to go to the doctor even when they have health insurance. Their housing prices are out of control and there's no relief in sight. This is year 10 of a recovery that feels like a Great Depression to many people, and we could be heading into another recession real soon. So things are getting very serious, and that's the immediate. You know, that's not even talking about things like climate catastrophes that are occurring. The problems are too big, they're coming too fast, they're not going away, that we either have to fix our election system or we got to smash the machines. You know, there ain't much else.
Yes.
So start raging against these electronic voting machines every day. They make no sense. You go to your ATM and use an electronic ATM, and you've got a receipt that comes out that confirms who the transaction that you've made. Here, you let go of your paper ballot into a scanning machine, and it's just hope and faith that it's being counted properly. And there's no reason.
It's probably a shredder.
Yeah, well.
I wouldn't be surprised, unfortunately. You have so much love in these comments. I can't get over it. Like, you are a celebrity. You're hot. That's a good one.
That is a good one. Yeah. Well, to my fans out there, let me tell you, I live like a monk. It's been 3 years of monkness, and I am looking forward to this struggle finally coming to an end. I always thought it was going to come to an end either with me going to Congress and having a more normal life. Imagine that. Or going back to the academy and having a more normal life. Because there's nothing normal about running as a candidate in Florida's 23rd Congressional District against Debbie Wasserman Schultz when you're in the belly of the beast. It's been a surreal event for me. I shouldn't call it an event, an ordeal, a 35-month ordeal now. And it's required a lot of sacrifice, and I'm not complaining. I mean, look, we're all in this together. And if this movement is going to grow and is going to bring about the kind of changes that we need as a country, as a people, as a species, it's got to happen now. People have got to be willing to step up and sacrifice and work hard and to keep the faith. And while I don't have any faith in the election system and I don't have any faith in our elected officials, I do have a lot of faith in the movement. That people are waking up, and they're waking up because they're responding to simple truths. You don't have to bullshit them. All you have to do is tell the truth, speak it the way it is, and people will keep waking up.
Absolutely. Oh my God, I don't want to fangirl, but you know I love you. You are so inspiring to so many of us.
Right, the love is mutual, believe me. And, you know, I get, you know, one of the nice things about this kind of grassroots campaign, I don't spend 30 hours a week on the phone talking to the corporate lobbyists. You know, I mean, this is what the studies have shown, right? That the average member of Congress spends 30 hours a week on the phone dialing for dollars, and they're talking to CEOs and lobbyists. And instead, I'm interacting with small donors, whether it's in person on the ground here looking for votes, or every now and then, you know, I do see some of the comments. I don't have much time to spend on social media. We have other folks who are able to do some of that for me. But I get some of the most touching emails from people who have very little. Sometimes they can't afford to give me a dime. They're telling me about all the problems they have, how their Social Security check doesn't make ends meet, and the kind of pain that they're in. And, you know, I must say that the messages of support I get from ordinary people is basically what's kept me going.
That's amazing. That is so awesome. Well, if you ever get sad or anything, you need to read these comments because you have a lot of support and a lot of love and a lot of people just giving you so much props for what you're doing for us. It's not about Florida anymore. This is we the people that you're fighting for. So thank you again so much for coming. You guys might not know this, but Tim was my very first guest.
I was.
He didn't know that until the next day.
Well, you got a great show, Joy, and you've got your own amazing fan base and, you know, viewers. And I'm very happy that my first interview since the shit hit the fan here in Broward County is with you. And I really appreciate all the love and support, and I'll keep fighting, and we all have to keep fighting.
Thank you so much. I agree. Thank you guys so much for watching too. Tomorrow night I have Congressman Ro Khanna coming back for the third time. I have Peter Douche on Friday. Monday I have, do you know who that is, Tim?
I've seen him on Twitter. Yes.
Yeah,
he's very entertaining. I love him. And I've interacted with Ro, I think it was about a year ago. So those are good interviews you have coming up, and I know you've got Jennifer Cohn as well.
Yes.
So keep doing what you're doing. Really appreciate your voice out there, Joy.
Same. So thank you guys so much for watching. Please share this and tweet at Fox, MSNBC, CNN. If I see a clip of this with me on Rachel Maddow, I may barf. I'm not going to say I won't, but that means you guys are doing your job. So thank you for that. So best of luck with everything, Tim. We love you, and you have our full support.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Take care.